Yama, the judge of karma. Yama is one of the most feared beings in Buddhist mythology, not because he creates suffering, but because he reveals it. He is the ruler of the dead, the judge who examines the karma accumulated across an entire lifetime and decides where a soul will be reborn next. In Buddhist cosmology, death is not an ending. It is a transition between states of existence, and Yama waits directly in the middle of that transition, like a cosmic gatekeeper standing at the edge of eternity. His origins are older than Buddhism itself. In ancient Indian mythology, Yama was believed to be the first mortal being who ever died. According to legend, he traveled into the unknown realm beyond death before anyone else and became ruler of the dead, simply because he was the first to cross the boundary every human fears most.
That single idea already made him different from many underworld gods across world mythology. Yama was not born divine. He became divine through death itself. But Buddhism transformed him into something far stranger. Traditional depictions of Yama are deliberately terrifying. He appears gigantic, surrounded by flames, wearing crowns made of skulls, with bulging eyes and skin colored deep red or blue-black, like burning embers. Some images show him riding a massive buffalo through the darkness of the underworld, while dragging souls toward judgment. Others portray him crushing human bodies beneath his feet to symbolize the destruction of ego, attachment, and illusion. To many outsiders, Yama looks less like a god and more like a demon. But Buddhist art often uses horrifying imagery to force viewers to confront spiritual truths they would rather avoid. The most disturbing detail about Yama is his mirror. In several Buddhist traditions, he possesses the mirror of karma, an object that reveals every action, lie, cruelty, selfish desire, and hidden thought committed during life with absolute honesty. Nothing can be concealed from it. No excuses survive it. Yama does not need witnesses because karma itself becomes the evidence. And that is what makes him terrifying. Yama does not represent evil. He represents inevitability. In Buddhism, karma is not divine revenge. It is consequence woven directly into reality itself. Some Buddhist texts describe the hell realms in horrifying detail. Frozen wastelands where bodies crack apart from endless cold. Burning worlds where souls regenerate, only to be destroyed again and again. Mountains made from blades, rivers of boiling metal. Demons tearing beings apart for thousands of years without rest. But unlike many eternal hells in world religion, Buddhist hell is temporary. Eventually, karma burns away. Eventually, every being leaves hell and is reborn somewhere else. Even suffering is impermanent. And that leads to the strangest fact of all. Even Yama himself is trapped inside samsara. The judge of the dead is not eternal. The ruler of hell will also eventually die, be reborn, and suffer like every other being in existence. Buddhism completely destroys the idea of an all-powerful ruler of evil. Yama is not a devil standing outside the system. He is another prisoner trapped within it. That philosophical twist changes everything. The universe of Buddhism is not controlled by gods rewarding or punishing humanity from above. It is an endless cosmic machine driven by karma, suffering, rebirth, and consequence. Yama simply reflects that system back at reality without mercy. And that may be the most terrifying part of his mythology. Yama does not hate humanity. He simply tells the truth. Mahakala, the wrathful protector. At first glance, Mahakala does not look enlightened. He looks like something humanity was never meant to see. His skin is black as burnt ash. Flames explode behind his body like the universe itself is on fire. He wears crowns made from skulls, necklaces crafted from severed heads, and tiger skins stained with blood. Some depictions show him drinking from skull cups filled with human remains while crushing corpses beneath his feet. Early travelers encountering Tibetan Buddhist temples often believed they were looking at demons instead of divine beings. And that misunderstanding is exactly the point. Mahakala represents one of the strangest ideas in Buddhist mythology. Wrath can also be compassion. He is one of the great Dharmapalas, protector deities tasked with defending Buddhist teachings from forces of ignorance, illusion, ego, and spiritual destruction. His terrifying appearance is symbolic. Mahakala does not destroy humanity. He destroys the obstacles preventing enlightenment. In Vajrayana Buddhism, peaceful compassion is not always enough to free the mind from attachment. Some illusions cling so deeply to human consciousness that they must be torn apart violently. Mahakala represents enlightenment in its most terrifying form. Even his name carries deeper meaning. Mahakala roughly translates to Great Black One, but the symbolism behind his blackness is far more philosophical than literal. In Tantric Buddhism, black often represents total absorption. Black absorbs all colors. Mahakala absorbs all fear, hatred, ego, attachment, and negative energy into emptiness itself. His darkness symbolizes the annihilation of illusion. And the deeper his mythology becomes, the stranger it feels. Some traditions describe Mahakala as an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of infinite compassion. In other words, one of the most violent-looking beings in Buddhism is actually born from compassion itself. That paradox sits at the center of Vajrayana philosophy. Compassion is not always gentle. Sometimes, compassion appears terrifying because the ego experiences spiritual transformation as destruction. Mahakala also exists in many different forms across Asia. Some versions possess 2 arms. Others have 4, 6, or multiple heads surrounded by rings of fire. Tibetan Buddhism alone contains entire systems of Mahakala manifestations connected to different tantric traditions and monastic orders. Certain monasteries believed Mahakala actively protected sacred teachings during wars, invasions, and periods of collapse. Some monks even claimed his rituals could psychologically shatter attachment itself when performed correctly. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Mahakala is what he represents psychologically. Most religions separate goodness and terror into opposite forces. Mahakala destroys that boundary entirely. He forces the viewer to confront the possibility that spiritual awakening itself may feel violent. The destruction of ego, illusion, and false identity is not portrayed as peaceful transcendence. It is portrayed as cosmic annihilation. Mahakala does not protect comfort. He protects awakening. Indra, the king of heaven. Long before Buddhism spread across Asia, Indra was already one of the most worshipped gods in India. Kings prayed to him before battle. Farmers begged him for rain. Entire civilizations feared the sound of thunder because thunder belonged to Indra. In the ancient Rig Veda, he appears as the ruler of heaven, wielder of the Vajra thunderbolt, and the warrior who killed Vritra, the colossal serpent that trapped the rivers of the world behind mountains until Indra shattered the sky itself and released the waters back to humanity. To ancient India, this was not symbolic mythology. Without rain, crops failed. Without rivers, kingdoms collapsed. Indra was the force standing between civilization and starvation. But Buddhism transformed Indra in one of the most devastating reversals in religious history. It did not erase him, it diminished him. In Buddhist cosmology, Indra, usually called Chakra, still rules the heaven of the 33 gods atop Mount Sumeru, the gigantic cosmic mountain believed to stand at the center of existence. His realm is filled with celestial gardens, radiant palaces, divine musicians, and wish-fulfilling trees capable of granting every imaginable desire. Gods there possess luminous bodies and lifespans so vast that entire human civilizations can rise and disappear while only a short period passes in heaven. And yet, despite all this unimaginable power, Indra is still trapped inside samsara. That single idea changes the meaning of divinity completely. In most religions, ruling heaven would mean transcendence. In Buddhism, it means almost nothing. Indra still experiences pride, jealousy, attachment, fear, and desire. Eventually his karma will expire. Eventually the king of the gods himself will die. Buddhist cosmology even describes terrifying signs that appear before a heavenly being falls from paradise. Their flower garlands begin to wither. Their glowing skin starts fading. Sweat appears beneath their arms for the first time. The beauty of heaven itself slowly turns hollow around them. Some Buddhist traditions claim heavenly beings suffer more psychologically than humans when facing death, because they have lived surrounded by pleasure for so long that they completely forgot impermanence existed at all. And that is exactly why Indra became so important in Buddhist philosophy. He becomes proof that power cannot save anyone from suffering. Some sutras even describe Indra descending from heaven to kneel before the Buddha and ask questions about enlightenment. The king of the gods seeking wisdom from a human being. Buddhism completely overturns the hierarchy of divinity itself. Enlightenment stands above godhood. A fully awakened human surpasses even the rulers of heaven, because gods still remain trapped inside illusion. One of the strangest things about Indra is that Buddhism preserves fragments of his older Vedic identity while quietly changing their meaning. He still carries the Vajra, the thunderbolt weapon once capable of splitting mountains apart. He still commands heavenly armies and protects cosmic order from demonic forces. But over time, the Vajra transformed from a weapon of destruction into one of the most sacred symbols in Vajrayana Buddhism. It eventually came to represent indestructible enlightenment itself, the sudden destruction of ignorance. A weapon once used to kill monsters became a symbol for shattering illusion within the human mind. But the deeper Indra's mythology becomes, the darker its implications start to feel. Because Buddhism transformed the ruler of heaven into a warning. You can command storms, conquer demons, rule paradise for millions of years, surround yourself with unimaginable beauty, and still remain completely trapped inside suffering. Even the King of Heaven cannot escape impermanence. Avalokiteshvara, the god who refused nirvana. Avalokiteshvara is one of the most beloved beings in all of Buddhism. While many gods rule heavens, command storms, or judge the dead, Avalokiteshvara represents something far more emotionally overwhelming: infinite compassion. According to Buddhist tradition, he made a vow so extreme that it reshaped entire civilizations across Asia. He refused to enter final enlightenment until every suffering being in existence had been saved first. And in Buddhist cosmology, that promise is almost impossible to comprehend. Because Buddhism does not describe merely one world, it describes infinite worlds, infinite realms, endless cycles of rebirth, and suffering stretching across countless universes without beginning or end. Yet Avalokiteshvara chose to remain inside samsara voluntarily. While others sought escape, he turned back towards suffering itself. Some traditions describe him hearing the cries of every living being simultaneously across existence. Others claim that when he fully witnessed the scale of suffering in the universe, his head split apart from grief. According to legend, the cosmic Buddha Amitabha reconstructed him with multiple heads and 1,000 arms so he could help more beings at once. In many depictions, each hand contains an eye staring outward in every direction. Compassion itself became omnidirectional, and that imagery transformed Avalokiteshvara into one of the most visually recognizable figures in Buddhist mythology. Some versions appear calm and radiant, draped in white robes surrounded by lotus flowers and celestial light. Others possess 11 heads, stacked toward the heavens, like ascending states of awareness. Certain forms appear with 1,000 arms extending outward across reality itself, like a divine nervous system connecting all suffering beings together. Buddhist art deliberately portrays compassion not as weakness, but as cosmic scale empathy, powerful enough to reshape existence itself. As Buddhism spread across Asia, Avalokiteshvara evolved dramatically across cultures. In China, the figure gradually transformed into Guanyin, often portrayed as female. In Japan, Kannon. In Tibet, Chinrezi. This transformation became one of the most fascinating examples of religious evolution in human history.
Entire civilizations reshaped the same cosmic figure while preserving the central idea underneath: limitless compassion directed toward a suffering universe. Some Buddhist traditions even believe the Dalai Lama is an incarnation of Avalokiteshvara. That belief transformed compassion itself into political and spiritual authority. Unlike many divine rulers associated with conquest or fear, Avalokiteshvara's power comes entirely from the refusal to abandon suffering beings, no matter how endless suffering becomes. But the deeper his mythology grows, the stranger its implications become. Because Avalokiteshvara represents a terrifying philosophical possibility, true compassion may require infinite sacrifice. Enlightenment in Buddhism is often described as liberation from suffering. Avalokiteshvara willingly delays that liberation for the sake of others. He becomes the embodiment of a universe where empathy is so absolute that it transcends self-preservation itself. Avalokiteshvara does not conquer the world. He chooses to carry it. Mara, the demon of illusion. Mara is not the ruler of hell. He is something far more dangerous. In Buddhist mythology, Mara represents the force that keeps living beings trapped inside suffering itself. He is temptation, fear, desire, ego, distraction, addiction, and illusion woven into a single cosmic entity. While other demons attack the body, Mara attacks the mind. And according to Buddhism, almost every human being is already under his control. Mara first appears most famously during the night Siddhartha Gautama was about to become the Buddha. As the future Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, approaching enlightenment, Mara realized that if Siddhartha awakened completely, countless beings might eventually escape samsara forever. So Mara launched an assault unlike anything else in Buddhist mythology. Some texts describe armies of demons flooding the earth beneath a black sky filled with fire, storms, and mountains collapsing from the force of their rage. Others claim Mara summoned hurricanes, weapons, floods, and monstrous creatures to break Siddhartha's concentration. But none of it worked. The future Buddha remained completely still. Then Mara changed tactics. He sent his daughters. In Buddhist tradition, Mara's daughters symbolize desire, temptation, fantasy, and emotional attachment. Different texts give them different names, but they often represent lust, craving, and dissatisfaction itself. They danced before Siddhartha, attempting to seduce him away from enlightenment. When beauty failed, Mara turned to fear. He challenged Siddhartha's right to achieve awakening at all, demanding proof that he deserved enlightenment. And that is when one of the most important moments in Buddhist mythology occurs. Instead of arguing, Siddhartha touched the earth. According to legend, the earth itself responded as witness to countless lifetimes of compassion and spiritual effort. Mara's armies collapsed. The illusions vanished. And by sunrise, Siddhartha became the Buddha. But the deeper Mara's symbolism becomes, the stranger he feels. Because Mara is not simply a devil-like figure existing outside humanity. In Buddhism, Mara often represents internal psychological forces: fear of change, addiction to pleasure, attachment to identity. The voice inside the human mind that constantly pulls consciousness back toward ego and suffering. Some Buddhist texts even suggest Mara appears differently to every person because he manifests through whatever attachment controls them most deeply. That idea transforms Mara from a mythological villain into something psychologically terrifying. He is not merely a monster waiting in darkness. He is the force hidden inside ordinary human behavior itself. Some traditions divide Mara into multiple forms. One Mara represents death. Another represents emotional corruption. Another symbolizes attachment to existence itself. In certain interpretations, even pleasure and success can become forms of Mara if they strengthen attachment and illusion. Buddhism turns temptation into an entire metaphysical system woven directly into reality. And unlike many evil beings across mythology, Mara is rarely defeated permanently. Even after the Buddha awakened, Mara continued appearing throughout Buddhist stories, trying to disrupt teachings, create doubt, and weaken spiritual progress.
Enlightenment was not portrayed as escaping a single battle. It was portrayed as seeing through illusion completely. Mara does not rule through violence. He rules through distraction.
Brahma, the god who thought he created the universe. Brahma appears in Buddhism as one of the highest gods in existence. His realms exist far above ordinary heavens, beyond desire, beyond pleasure, beyond many forms of physical existence itself. Some Buddhist traditions describe Brahma beings as so spiritually advanced that they no longer possess ordinary bodies at all. They exist in vast states of meditative consciousness, while entire worlds rise and collapse beneath them unnoticed. And yet, despite this unimaginable spiritual power, Buddhism claims Brahma made a catastrophic mistake. He believed he created the universe. According to Buddhist cosmology, universes are constantly destroyed and reborn across endless cycles of time called kalpas.
After one cosmic destruction, a Brahma being may be reborn alone inside an empty new universe before any other life appears. Eventually, other beings begin emerging around him as existence slowly reforms itself again. And because Brahma arrived first, he assumes he must have created everything. That single story becomes one of Buddhism's most devastating philosophical critiques of creator gods. The problem is not evil. The problem is ignorance. Even enormously advanced divine beings can misunderstand reality itself. Some Buddhist texts portray Brahma as noble, compassionate, and deeply respectful toward the Buddha. Others portray him as tragically limited, a cosmic being with a lifespan lasting billions of years, who still cannot fully perceive ultimate truth. In several sutras, Brahma even descends from his heavenly realm to ask the Buddha questions about enlightenment, mirroring the same theological reversal seen with Indra. Buddhism repeatedly places awakening above divinity itself, and the scale of Brahma's heavens is almost impossible to imagine. In certain Buddhist cosmologies, beings there exist in states of meditation so deep that desire barely exists anymore. Entire universes can disappear, while Brahma realms remain untouched for incomprehensible lengths of time. Some traditions describe these heavens as silent cosmic expanses filled with radiant light and near abstract consciousness, rather than physical landscapes. But eventually, even these realms collapse. That is the terrifying core of Brahma's symbolism. Buddhism transforms one of the highest creator-like gods into proof that even cosmic existence itself is impermanent. Entire universes die. Entire heavens vanish. Even gods living for aeons remain trapped inside samsara. Brahma becomes the embodiment of a deeply unsettling Buddhist idea. Intelligence, power, longevity, and spiritual achievement still do not guarantee liberation from illusion. Even the God who believed he created reality was still trapped inside it. Tara, the mother of compassion. Tara is one of the most powerful and beloved figures in Buddhist mythology. Yet, unlike many gods associated with war, judgment, or cosmic destruction, her presence feels strangely intimate. She is the savior who appears in moments of fear, suffering, illness, loneliness, and spiritual despair. Across Tibet, Nepal, Mongolia, China, and parts of India, millions prayed to Tara not as a distant cosmic ruler, but as a compassionate force capable of responding instantly to human suffering. And according to legend, she was born from a tear. Some traditions claim Tara emerged when Avalokiteshvara looked upon the suffering of the universe and began to weep. From one tear came the white Tara, from another came the green Tara. Compassion itself became divine life. That origin transformed Tara into something deeply symbolic within Buddhism. She is not merely another goddess. She is compassion taking form in response to suffering. Green Tara became the most famous manifestation. She is usually depicted seated upon a lotus, glowing emerald green, one leg extended forward as if ready to rise instantly to help those calling her name. Unlike many calm, meditative Buddhas sitting in detached stillness, Tara appears active, immediate, moving toward suffering instead of away from it.
Buddhist texts often describe her rescuing beings from the 8 great fears: lions, elephants, fire, snakes, thieves, imprisonment, floods, and demons. But over time, these dangers also became psychological symbols representing pride, ignorance, anger, jealousy, greed, attachment, and illusion. White Tara carries a different symbolism. She represents healing, serenity, longevity, and maternal compassion. In many depictions, she possesses 7 eyes, 1 on her forehead, 2 on her hands, and 2 on her feet, symbolizing awareness extending in every direction. Compassion itself becomes all-seeing. But Tara's mythology also contains one of the most radical ideas in Buddhist history. According to some traditions, a group of monks once advised Tara that she should pray to be reborn as a man in future lives, because enlightenment was supposedly easier to achieve in male form. Tara refused completely. She declared that concepts like male and female were ultimately illusions created by ignorance, then vowed to remain in female form throughout all future lifetimes while guiding beings toward enlightenment. In medieval religious history, that statement was astonishingly revolutionary. As Vajrayana Buddhism evolved, Tara expanded into entire systems of manifestations. 21 Taras emerged, each associated with different colors, energies, symbols, fears, and spiritual functions. Some appeared peaceful and radiant. Others became wrathful and terrifying, surrounded by flames capable of destroying demonic forces and inner illusion alike. Tara evolved into a complete spiritual universe by herself, and that may be why her mythology became so emotionally powerful across Asia. While many Buddhist cosmic beings feel distant, abstract, or overwhelming in scale, Tara feels personal, protective, immediate. She represents the possibility that compassion is not passive observation from above, but an active force constantly moving towards suffering wherever it appears. Tara does not wait in heaven for humanity to reach enlightenment. She runs toward those still trapped in darkness. Ksitigarbha, the savior of hell. Ksitigarbha is one of the most unsettling figures in Buddhist mythology because his entire existence is built around a promise almost impossible to fulfill. While many divine beings seek enlightenment, transcendence, or escape from samsara, Ksitigarbha made a vow so extreme that it transformed him into the guardian of the dead themselves. According to Buddhist tradition, he refused to become a Buddha until every hell realm across existence had been emptied completely. In other words, he chose to descend willingly into the worst suffering imaginable, and remain there. His name is often translated as Earth Treasury or Earth Womb, symbolizing hidden spiritual depth buried beneath darkness and suffering. Unlike wrathful protectors surrounded by flames and skulls, Ksitigarbha usually appears calm, shaved-headed, and dressed like a wandering monk carrying 2 objects, a staff and a glowing, wish-fulfilling jewel. But both objects hide deeper symbolism. His staff is said to open the gates of hell itself, allowing him to travel freely through realms of punishment and death. His jewel represents light within darkness, enlightenment carried directly into places where hope barely exists anymore. And Buddhist hells are horrifying beyond imagination. Some texts describe frozen wastelands where bodies crack apart endlessly from unbearable cold. Others describe burning worlds filled with rivers of molten metal, forests made of blades, mountains crushing souls repeatedly, and beings torn apart for thousands of years, only to regenerate and suffer again. Yet, unlike eternal damnation in some religions, Buddhist hell remains temporary. Karma eventually fades. Rebirth eventually returns. Ksitigarbha exists within that cycle as a guide moving through suffering itself. One of the most famous legends about him begins with grief. In a previous life, Ksitigarbha was said to be a young woman whose mother committed terrible actions that condemned her to hell after death. Horrified by the suffering awaiting her mother, she prayed, performed acts of devotion, and ultimately descended spiritually into the underworld itself to save her. That story evolved into one of the central emotional ideas surrounding Ksitigarbha: compassion powerful enough to follow suffering even after death. As Buddhism spread into China and Japan,
Ksitigarbha became deeply connected with mourning, funerals, lost children, and wandering spirits. In Japan, he became Jizo, one of the most beloved religious figures in the country. Small Jizo statues appear along roadsides, cemeteries, forests, and mountain paths, wearing tiny red bibs or children's clothing left by grieving families. Many believed Jizo protected the souls of children who died before their parents, guiding them safely through the afterlife. And that emotional intimacy makes Ksitigarbha very different from many cosmic Buddhist beings. He does not rule heaven. He does not command storms or armies. His mythology focuses almost entirely on suffering, grief, death, and compassion directed toward the forgotten. But the deeper his vow becomes, the more impossible it feels. Buddhist cosmology describes infinite worlds filled with endless rebirth and endless suffering. New beings constantly enter hell realms through karma, which means Ksitigarbha's mission may never truly end. He becomes the embodiment of compassion, confronting infinity itself. While other beings escape samsara, Ksitigarbha walks directly back into it. Manjushri, the sword of wisdom. Manjushri does not carry a weapon to kill enemies. He carries a weapon to destroy ignorance itself. In Buddhist mythology, he is the bodhisattva of wisdom, often depicted as a youthful figure holding a flaming sword in one hand and a sacred scripture in the other. But unlike many divine beings associated with compassion or salvation, Manjushri represents something colder and more dangerous: the terrifying clarity of enlightenment. His sword is one of the most important symbols in all of Buddhist art. It is not an ordinary blade. Buddhist texts describe it as capable of cutting through illusion, ignorance, ego, attachment, and false perception in a single strike. The flames surrounding it symbolize wisdom so intense that it burns away delusion itself. In many depictions, the sword rises above his head like a beam of fire splitting reality apart. And that symbolism reveals something deeply important about Buddhism. Enlightenment is not portrayed merely as peace. It is portrayed as destruction. The destruction of illusion. The destruction of ignorance. The destruction of the false self human beings spend their entire lives protecting. Manjushri's other object, the sacred scripture resting upon a lotus flower, usually represents the Prajnaparamita texts, teachings associated with ultimate wisdom and emptiness. In Buddhist philosophy, emptiness does not mean nothing exists. It means all things lack permanent independent essence. Reality is fluid, interconnected, constantly changing, and impossible to possess permanently. Manjushri becomes the embodiment of the terrifying realization that the stable world humans believe in may itself be an illusion created by attachment and perception. Some Buddhist traditions describe Manjushri as one of the oldest bodhisattvas in existence, so ancient that he appears across countless universes, helping beings approach enlightenment through wisdom rather than faith alone. In Tibetan Buddhism, he became especially important among monks and scholars who believed devotion to Manjushri could sharpen intelligence, memory, and spiritual understanding. Certain chants associated with him were even recited before debates because wisdom itself became a sacred force. But despite his calm appearance, Manjushri's symbolism can feel strangely unsettling. Compassion comforts suffering. Wisdom dismantles identity. The deeper Buddhist philosophy becomes, the more dangerous wisdom starts to appear. To truly see reality clearly may require destroying nearly every illusion the human mind depends on emotionally: permanence, ego, control, certainty, even the idea of a fixed self. That is why Manjushri's sword matters so much. It does not protect the ego. It cuts straight through it. Maitreya, the Buddha who has not arrived yet. Most Buddhist figures belong to the distant past or exist in unreachable cosmic realms. Maitreya is different. He belongs to the future. According to Buddhist prophecy, Maitreya is the next Buddha destined to appear when the teachings of the current Buddha have completely vanished from the world. By the time he arrives, Buddhism itself will have been forgotten. Humanity will have descended once again into ignorance, violence, greed, and spiritual collapse.
and then a new Buddha will emerge. That single idea transformed Maitreya into one of the most powerful symbols of hope in Buddhist mythology. While many Buddhist stories focus on impermanence and decline, Maitreya represents renewal after collapse. Entire civilizations may disappear.
Sacred teachings may decay. Humanity may lose its understanding of enlightenment completely. But eventually, the cycle begins again. Some traditions describe Maitreya currently waiting in Tushita heaven, a celestial realm where future Buddhas prepare before descending into the human world. Unlike wrathful protectors or terrifying underworld judges, Maitreya is usually depicted smiling peacefully, radiating serenity and abundance. In parts of East Asia, his imagery gradually merged with the laughing Buddha figure, a joyful monk associated with prosperity, contentment, and future happiness. That transformation gave Maitreya a strangely comforting presence compared to many darker beings in Buddhist cosmology. But older Buddhist prophecies surrounding him are far more cosmic in scale. Some texts claim that by the time Maitreya appears, human lifespans will once again reach 80,000 years. Trees will produce food effortlessly. The world will become peaceful and prosperous after ages of suffering and decline. Humanity itself will transform psychologically. Violence, greed, and hatred will diminish enough for enlightenment to spread widely across civilization again. And yet, hidden beneath that hopeful vision is a darker implication. For Maitreya to arrive, the current age must first end. Buddhist cosmology often describes history as cyclical rather than linear. Civilizations rise, decay, collapse, and are reborn endlessly across cosmic time. Enlightenment appears. Humanity forgets it. Suffering grows again. Then another awakened being emerges to restart the cycle. Maitreya becomes the embodiment of that repeating cosmic pattern. Salvation delayed across unimaginable stretches of time. Throughout history, belief in Maitreya has repeatedly influenced real-world politics, revolutions, and religious movements. Across China especially, multiple rebellions and secret societies claimed the arrival of Maitreya was near, believing a new age was about to begin. Entire uprisings were fueled by the idea that the current world order had become spiritually corrupted beyond repair. And perhaps that is why Maitreya's mythology remains so emotionally powerful. He represents a deeply human hope hidden inside Buddhist cosmology. The belief that no matter how dark an era becomes, collapse is never truly the end. Another awakening always waits somewhere beyond the horizon. Fudo-myo, the immovable king. Fudo-myo is one of the most terrifying figures in Japanese Buddhism. His face is twisted with rage. Flames erupt behind him like the gates of hell themselves have opened. He holds a sword in one hand and a rope in the other, standing completely motionless while chaos burns around him. To outsiders, he looks more like a demon than a divine being. And once again, Buddhist mythology turns terror into enlightenment. Fudo-myo, whose name roughly means the immovable wisdom king, emerged from esoteric Buddhist traditions that spread from India into China and eventually Japan. He is considered a wrathful manifestation of cosmic wisdom itself, particularly associated with the transcendent Buddha Vairocana. His terrifying appearance is symbolic. The rage on his face does not represent hatred. It represents absolute refusal to surrender to ignorance, illusion, temptation, or spiritual weakness. His sword is one of the most important parts of his imagery. Known as the Sword of Wisdom, it cuts through delusion, attachment, and false perception. In some depictions, the blade is surrounded by dragon-like flames, capable of burning away illusion itself. Meanwhile, the rope in his other hand symbolizes restraint, the binding of destructive desires and uncontrolled passions that trap beings inside suffering. But the most fascinating aspect of Fudo is his stillness. While nearly every part of his appearance radiates violence and movement, Fudo himself remains completely unmoving. Buddhist symbolism intentionally creates this contradiction. The world burns with chaos, fear, temptation, and emotional instability. Yet enlightenment remains perfectly motionless in the center of it all. That is why he is called immovable. He represents consciousness that cannot be shaken by suffering. As esoteric Buddhism evolved in Japan, Fudo became enormously important among warriors, monks, and mountain ascetics. Samurai admired him because his mythology combined discipline, fearlessness, and spiritual power into a single image. Certain rituals associated with Fudo involved massive fire ceremonies where monks chanted before towering flames believed to consume karmic impurities and spiritual obstacles. Fire itself became purification. And visually, Fudo feels radically different from many peaceful Buddhist figures. He is usually surrounded by jagged rocks, darkness, swords, smoke, and roaring fire instead of lotus flowers and celestial light. His face often shows fangs biting downward and one eye partially closed, symbolizing the union of anger and compassion, violence and wisdom. Even his body posture feels heavy, rooted, impossible to move. But beneath all the wrath and fire, Fudo represents a deeply psychological truth. Human beings are constantly dragged by fear, desire, emotion, distraction, and suffering. The mind moves endlessly. Thoughts panic endlessly. Fudo becomes the image of a consciousness that remains perfectly still while everything else collapses around it. He does not destroy chaos by escaping it. He stands inside the fire and refuses to move. Vairocana, the universe itself. Vairocana is not simply a god sitting somewhere inside the universe. In many forms of Buddhist cosmology, Vairocana is the universe. While other deities rule heavens, protect teachings, or guide souls through suffering, Vairocana represents something far more abstract and overwhelming. Ultimate reality itself, made conscious. In esoteric Buddhism, especially within Vajrayana traditions, Vairocana is often described as the cosmic Buddha, the source from which all Buddhas and enlightened manifestations emerge. Some traditions portray him seated at the absolute center of existence, surrounded by infinite celestial realms, radiating outward like a spiritual mandala, expanding across reality itself. Unlike earthly beings trapped inside time and rebirth, Vairocana symbolizes pure, awakened consciousness beyond limitation. And the scale of that symbolism becomes almost impossible to comprehend. Certain Buddhist texts describe the universe not as empty space, but as an infinite network of interconnected worlds reflecting one another endlessly. Every particle of existence contains every other particle. Every realm mirrors countless other realms simultaneously. Vairocana becomes the embodiment of that cosmic unity, enlightenment existing everywhere at once. In some interpretations, all Buddhas are simply different aspects of Vairocana, expressing themselves across reality through different forms. That idea transformed Buddhist art completely. Vairocana statues were often built at enormous scale because ordinary human proportions could no longer represent what he symbolized. In Japan, the great Buddha of Nara became one of the largest bronze statues on Earth, created to embody Vairocana's cosmic presence physically. Seated in impossible stillness, surrounded by temple architecture designed to overwhelm the viewer emotionally, the statue was intended to make humanity feel microscopic against the scale of enlightenment itself. But Vairocana's symbolism goes deeper than size. In many mandalas used in esoteric Buddhism, Vairocana occupies the center, while other Buddhas appear around him, representing different aspects of awakened consciousness. Wisdom, compassion, power, perception, and transcendence. The universe itself becomes a spiritual structure organized around enlightenment. And perhaps the strangest part of Vairocana's mythology is how impersonal he feels compared to other Buddhist beings. Avalokiteshvara feels emotional. Kittigarbha feels compassionate. Mahakala feels terrifying. Vairocana feels cosmic, vast, almost beyond personality itself. He represents a state where individuality dissolves into universal awareness. That philosophical shift changes the scale of Buddhist mythology completely.
Earlier figures still feel connected to human emotion: fear, grief, compassion, suffering, temptation. Vairocana moves beyond all of that. He represents enlightenment so absolute that the boundary between self and cosmos disappears entirely. Vairocana does not merely understand the universe, he is the universe, seeing itself clearly for the first time. Amitabha, the Lord of infinite light. Amitabha rules no storm, commands no armies, and judges no dead. His power comes from something far stranger: the promise that suffering does not have to be endless. In Mahayana Buddhism, Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light, the ruler of the Pure Land, a paradise said to exist beyond ordinary cycles of pain, corruption, violence, and spiritual decay. While many Buddhist paths toward enlightenment are portrayed as difficult beyond comprehension, Amitabha introduced a radically different idea: salvation through faith, devotion, and remembrance. And for millions across Asia, that idea changed Buddhism forever. According to legend, Amitabha was once a monk named Dharmakara who witnessed the endless suffering consuming existence and made an enormous series of vows. He promised to create a perfect realm where beings could be reborn free from the chaos of ordinary samsara, a world designed entirely to help souls move toward enlightenment without falling back into ignorance. Over countless ages of spiritual practice, those vows transformed him into Amitabha, the Buddha whose light was said to illuminate infinite universes simultaneously. The Pure Land itself is described in imagery almost dreamlike in scale. Lakes made from crystal waters ripple with lotus flowers the size of chariots. Trees composed of jewels sing sacred teachings when the wind passes through them. The sky glows with golden light that never fades. Birds chant the Dharma. There is no hunger, no war, no hatred, no lower rebirth, no endless struggle for survival. Everything within the Pure Land exists to guide consciousness gently toward awakening. But beneath that beauty lies one of the most emotionally powerful ideas in Buddhist mythology. Because Amitabha's paradise was not created for perfect beings, it was created for ordinary people. As Buddhism spread through China and Japan, Pure Land traditions became enormously popular, partly because they offered hope to people who believed enlightenment through difficult meditation and monastic discipline might be impossible during spiritually corrupted ages. Devotion to Amitabha became a path accessible to farmers, workers, grieving families, the elderly, and the dying. Simply reciting Amitabha's name with sincere faith was believed capable of creating rebirth in the Pure Land itself. That simplicity made Amitabha radically different from many cosmic Buddhist figures. Mahakala destroys illusion violently. Manjushri cuts ignorance apart with wisdom. Amitabha offers refuge. And yet, even this softer vision contains enormous philosophical depth. The Pure Land is not eternal heaven in the traditional sense. It is a realm designed to help beings finally escape samsara completely. Even paradise itself remains part of the journey toward enlightenment. Buddhism repeatedly refuses permanence, even in its most beautiful visions. That is why Amitabha became such a powerful ending point for Buddhist mythology. After death gods, wrathful protectors, cosmic Buddhas, hell realms, illusion, and endless rebirth, Amitabha represents something almost fragile in comparison: hope. Not the hope that suffering never existed, but the hope that suffering is not the final truth of existence.